Tell us your name and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Laverne Jones Gore. I'm a widow. I am the mother of 3 children, sons. I grew up in Cleveland on 92nd and Huff in the inner city. I attended the Cleveland Public Schools. I'm a product of 9 children, mother, father. We grew up on 93rd and Woodland. Graduated John Adams High School. Went to the Claremont Colleges for undergraduate. I have my undergraduate degree in economics and organizational studies. I have my master's degree in education and adult learning, my emphasis. I have my master's in public health, in socialized medicine, directed at minority group populations. I've done extensive work as far as research in minority group populations for public health. And I run my own business. I currently live in Cleveland. I've always maintained a residence in Cleveland. I've traveled the entire world and lived in most of it with my husband, who is now deceased. We spent a lot of time overseas, but we always maintained a tie and a community effort into the Cleveland community. We've been involved in various organizations. And I don't know if I'm using up my 20 minutes, but unless you need to know more about me, can we go to the next question?
Absolutely. All right. What quantifiable work have you done inside the 11th Congressional District in the past 6 years as it relates to legislative policy?
Well, when you're talking about legislative policies, I think that everything impacts legislative policies when you're talking about a community. We ran the Ohio Diversity Coalition, and I was the executive director. And we sent a great number of issues as far as poverty in the Black community, as far as helping educational pursuits in the African-American community, but not just in the African-American community. We're talking about the 11th district, and it incorporates a lot of poverty, and it's just not all located in the Black community. It's a majority community, of course. And we did a lot of things to help the poor because we believe that poverty is one of the systemic reasons for the lack of growth inside of the African-American community. We also ran a leadership group for African-American young people between the ages of 20 and 44, because we wanted those to be the future leaders. And when you're talking about legislative input, you're talking about bringing to the community things that are necessary to enhance that community. And I believe that the efforts that we took forth, and of course, I've worked on the police commission, I've worked on a lot of commissions to suggest that the Black community, the white community, the Republican community, and the Democratic community within the 11th district, because you do understand the 11th district is inclusive of one of the most impoverished districts in the United States. It's the second poorest district in the United States of America for a city its size. When you consider that, any legislation, we had a congresswoman that is leaving that was focused on food stamps and welfare. I think we need to focus on the things that are important. And I say, when we were pushing for education and we were pushing for inclusiveness from the Ohio Diversity Commission for schools and our students, those are the kinds of things that enhance a neighborhood. You build people up and you make sure that they are prepared. And that's what we were doing. We were spending a lot of time preparing the Sarah J. Harper Leadership Institute. We funded and supported and raised funds for libraries because we believe that education. So when you're saying legislative pursuits, I'm talking about lifting a community, and that's what we focused on. And I think we need the next question because 20 minutes goes fast.
Right.
All right. You don't mind if I drink a sip of coffee, do you?
Do your thing. What committees would you like to be on in Washington, and how would they help the 11th Congressional District?
I guess one of the things that we have to look at, and we have to look at in all sincerity with the 11th district, we have to have the education. We have to work on education here in this community. Because if we have a 66% illiteracy ratio in the 11th community, possibly not, and here, I need to backtrack a bit if you don't mind, because we have some of the wealthiest suburbs, and then we have some of the poorest city elements, right? So when you're talking about illiteracy, we have a very high illiteracy ratio in the 11th district. So education is very important. My background is education. but my background is also public health. So health and human services is very important to me because we have serious issues in the 11th district as far as public health, because we have poverty and we have a serious number of low income housing. And we have illiteracy, and all of those things breed problems within a community. So I'd like to sit on health and human services. Of course, the predecessor here, she wanted to be on the agriculture committee. We didn't see that turn into a secretary spot for her, but we did see the fact that she was very interested in food stamps. I'd like the jobs committee, something that promotes job and welfare. Again, we're back to health and human services, economic development. That's where I'm at. Next.
Okay, what is your current relationship with the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, one of the things you have to look at is I am extremely proud of the fact that we have a woman of color in the vice presidency. I am extremely proud of that because I am one of those people that understands that we have not only reached the glass ceiling, we have penetrated it. And to have an African-American woman get that high. Now, when you're talking about a relationship with the Biden-Harris administration, I have to clearly suggest to you that I am a Republican, so that relationship is limited. But as far as it relates to the overall pride that we can look at for having an African-American woman in the Harris administration, I think that's something that we all should be proud of. And I don't think there's a woman of color out here who is not proud. We're very proud to have her there, and we're very prayerful that she will succeed and be accepted in her role as leader. Next question.
Yep. What are some examples of how you have crossed party lines to help with racial equity inside the 11th Congressional District in the past 6 years?
I could go to the last 50 some years and suggest to you this big tattoo on my body tells you that I have to cross racial lines every day. And when you're talking about
no, cross party lines to help
party lines
with
that's
racial.
Exactly right.
Yep.
Okay, because if in fact the Republican Party is going to acknowledge the fact that we as Black people are interested in making sure that their leadership is inclusive of the Black community, there has to be people like me. And what I do, running for office is one of those things under the Republican banner. Running for office under the Republican banner crosses party lines, because typically this big tattoo on my body suggests to people that I'm supposed to be a Democrat. My family, we've always been Republican. And when I cross party lines, I am always over in the Republican part of the town saying that, listen, the Black community has serious needs. And perhaps because they don't give you the majority of their vote, or maybe even the minority of their vote, we still, as Americans, have an obligation to the African-American community. And we have an obligation to all communities, I believe, because the 11th district is inclusive of all communities. But the African-American community does not have a true presence in the Republican Party. So every time I wake up and say that I am for the Black community and I'm a Republican, I am going to cross party lines. And what is significant, I jump over into the Democratic Party. And that seems to be something that most people don't understand. As a Republican, when I am talking to my people and when I am raising funds for my people and when I am doing leadership training, I am crossing party lines into the Democratic Party. And I believe that's what we need in America. We need an opportunity to have people that are capable and interested in being a part of America and be willing to cross any line that it takes to make African Americans part of that process. Next question.
All right, what is your plan for improvement to our current criminal justice system in the 11th Congressional District?
Oh my God, now you've hit on something that I enjoy. The criminal justice system in the 11th district in America, in all of Ohio, in the United States, I believe that criminal justice system is unfairly tilted against African Americans. I believe that we have to at least sound the bell. We have to start continuously making sure that people understand that what is happening is unfair. When you go to the prison system and when you see who's in the prison system, we have a breakdown of the family. We have Black men who are in prison. And if you look at the same crimes, what we've done is we looked at the same crimes that many people experience. And we'll just use something simple. If you take a piece of candy, you being a Black man, and maybe a white man takes a piece of candy, and then when the sentencing part comes together, they don't match. I think that we need to look at this whole system and say that there is systematic racism in the criminal justice system. And we need to look at that, and we need to have those types of investigations happening. I'm very, very conscious of what's going on in America, and I'm very, very conscious of what's not going on in America. And we as African Americans, and I will say this as an African American and a mother of sons, we have a lot of work to do, and I believe that we need to start shining the light on the criminal justice system, and we cannot tolerate what's been happening to our community and our men and our children and our daughters any longer, because if we do, that is the biggest reason. The criminal justice system, we have to start electing judges. We have to start sending our children to law school. We have to make sure that these systems are extremely equitable, and I do not believe that they are currently. And I think we need to shine a light on them, and I'm going to do everything that I can to shine that light once I'm elected. But more importantly, I think we need to work to make sure that we have enough judges that are sympathetic to our community. And when I say our community, America, yes, but America that has a tattoo that is very noticeable when people are passing out sentencing. Next question.
All righty. What are your plans for bridging the educational and digital divide gaps in the 11th Congressional District?
Well, one of the things you have to keep in mind is, as I told you earlier, the 11th Congressional District suffers from poverty. You know, I told you it incorporates the second most impoverished district in the United States. So we have to start lifting people up. First, we have to figure out a way. And, you know, I was on a website, we were on Facebook yesterday and we were talking about this very issue. How do we take the educational system? And I'm sure everybody that's in your listening audience or in your webinar situation read about the kid in Baltimore who had a 0.13 average and he graduated a third in his class, right? You know, at the top third of his class. It was a very stringent article that was all over the country. Everybody was reading about it, and it happened to be an African American. One of the things that happened was many people thought, do we blame the mother? Do we blame the child? Do we blame the school system? Do we blame, well, poverty wasn't included in that, and it should have been. We need to have training. We need to have an educational system that focuses on training, development, but we need jobs. We need electricians, we need plumbers, we need vocational training. I think we need to look at the system of education and say to ourselves, it's a mess. It's a mess, because when you have children that can't read, when you have a 66% illiteracy ratio in the 11th district, we've ignored this too long. All of us have. It's not a Republican problem. It's not a Democratic problem, but a 66% illiteracy ratio inside of one of the second highest poverty ratios in the United States of America says to all of us that we've ignored our children. We've ignored our community. We have done nothing. So if you expect anybody to walk in and be able to turn it around in a day, it's not going to happen, but it can happen if we get together on this. 66% illiteracy ratio. That's what we have. And that's what we've tolerated. Next question.
What do you see as the biggest impediment to the wealth disparities in the 11th Congressional District?
Education. 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 If you can't read, you can do nothing. We allow our children to not be able to read. We allow our families to not have proper health care. And when you're talking about wealth distribution, once you learn how to make money, it becomes easy. It's not that hard to make. But you have to learn how to read. You have to learn how to improve yourself. There's so many things that you have to know, but it all begins with reading. If you can't read, how are you going to progress? And once again, education, education, education. We have to teach our children, our mothers, our fathers, the importance of education to our children. My father, I told somebody the other day, there are 9 children in my family and we grew up poor. I didn't know we were poor because my father kept telling me the way to receive freedom. And this is on 92nd and House. If you have your education, you can be free. And I kept thinking that my father was always, I said, Dad, we don't have slavery anymore. You know, I kept reminding him because he kept telling us about being free, being free. And he just would point at the top of our temple and he'd say, they can't take what's in here from you. They can never take that from you. So that's your freedom. And if my father knew it back in 1960, I assure you that lesson I never learned, because you know what I do? I take my grandsons and I pop at their head and I said, freedom. This is where you will acquire your freedom. I popped it in my son's head, freedom. Education. Next question.
All right, and this is the last question. You got 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay.
What are the priorities of the Biden-Harris administration for the 11th Congressional District?
I would hope that the priorities for the 11th district are to increase our availability to low-income housing. I think that we have a problem here in the 11th district with low-income housing. I think that would be a focus. I'm excited about the fact that the predecessor Congresswoman, she will be working with HUD. I think the focus should be on jobs and vocational training. I think implementation there. I think the infrastructure here in Cleveland, if they would allow federal funding to come in for that. I think it's about jobs, education, the same thing, jobs, education, and the ability, as you say, to close the wealth gap will automatically happen. And I think the Biden-Harris administration, based on the amount of support they receive from the 11th district, I would imagine that they will be very gracious in sponsoring education, job training, and federal funds to accommodate our infrastructure and our housing. So I don't know if I took 3 minutes, but that's exactly what I believe. I wanted to thank you and your audience for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you. I look forward to speaking to you again, I hope, and I thank you.
Thank you, and you had 2 minutes left. So,
well, now I can enjoy my coffee before I leave.
Right, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Good night. Good night, everybody.
You. Have a great one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.